She's a doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dovec, and she's a dietitian.
Hey, I'm Hannah Schuyler, and together we are
The Doctor Dietitian Collab. Oh my
All right,
goodness.
and today we have a very special guest. We're super excited. So this is something we were just saying. We don't know that we've ever heard someone doing this, but this is Aby. She is currently in preparation for surgery in 9 days, I want to say, from when we're recording. So getting close. Welcome,
Yeah.
Aby.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. This is so exciting.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
lot to go over, and like Hannah said, we are in the final hours, days before you undergo gastric bypass. So we really just want to rewind and kind of go back to the beginning of your story, of your kind of struggles with weights, what's worked, what hasn't worked, the highs and lows, and what kind of got you to this moment and how you feel in this moment as well. Is it an emotional roller coaster? Just the response of others. Like we really want to get into it so we can get into the psyche of the acute pre-op patient and how you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a roller coaster. I don't think
Yeah.
I expected it to be quite so. I mean, I knew it would be a lot. I knew it would be heavy. But I think it's brought up a lot of history, a lot of memories, and
Mm.
just the whys. You get to the root of the whys. And for me, I have been overweight most of my adult life. I would say probably my entire, once I turned 18, I was a size 16, my senior year of high school, going to prom, even just trying to find a prom dress was difficult. I think I had maybe like five or six selections at David's Bridal kind of thing. It wasn't like there was a lot available. And you just kind of get used to that being a larger body over time. And so I've had the constant up and down battle with my weight. I went through this phase probably from 18 to 23 or 22 or so, where I was just constantly trying to lose weight. All of my photos online, the only time that I posted anything where I was full body was when it was, oh, I lost 50 pounds, or hey, I lost 30 pounds, or,
Mm.
some sort of check-in. I didn't have any photos of me just smiling and living life, unless they were cropped. I mean, I've looked back at the photos and I cropped everything. And and then, of course, it's kind of ironic because whenever you have a conversation with a doctor and they ask you, well, what have you tried? And I'm like, well, let me pull out my list.
Yeah.
Scroll.
And right, yeah,
Yeah, the
it's pretty
CVS
much
receipt.
exactly 100% because that's what it is. I've done keto, I've done the South Beach diet, I did the shakes, like with the beach body, any shake there's ever
Hmm.
been, anytime there's a fad or a trend, that was something that I jumped on. And then even just trying, removing things from my life. So I spent a fair portion of my early adult years just focusing on that. And then I've been married before, I am married currently, but I also went through a divorce in my early 20s. And of course, that kind of triggered this whole like, oh, am I ever going to find anybody to love me again kind of thing. And so I was in the gym hardcore. And I think I really went through it probably through that time period of just trying to figure out what was next. And it even got to the point sometimes where I was obsessing over it. And so for
Hmm.
me, that's why some of this process leading up to surgery can be a little bit, I don't want to say triggering, but it is. You have to kind of
Yeah.
face the fears of the things that you went through previously and come at it with a better and a healthier mindset. And so I am thankful because I have my therapy, which is amazing. I could not do this without the process of therapy and the work that I've done there. But also just being able to kind of reset the mindset has been so helpful for me because I was obsessing over, the number on the scale and the food that was going into my body to the point that it was unhealthy. And now I'm able to reset the clock.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about going through that tough breakup, the divorce, and I mean, that's just hard. It's just a devastating life event that happened. And at that time, where were you on Earth? Is that when you were in Vegas? Because I know that you've been kind of all over a little bit.
Yeah, I was actually in Alaska. I'm born and raised in Alaska.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Someone's
So
Wow,
I've never met anybody from Alaska.
like from Alaska. No, I don't think
No.
so. I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, you really
Born and
moved
raised.
like as far away from there as you could.
Yeah, that's true. I think Florida is the
Yeah.
polar opposite, quite literally, of
Right.
Alaska.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I
Interesting.
married my high school sweetheart and then got divorced at 21.
Okay.
And because the whole purpose of us getting married initially, of course, other than love, was he was going into the military. And
Hmm.
so we wanted to be able to move together and be able to live life together that way. So and then, things change, plans change, and it did end up happening. And then we both kind of were just trying to figure out what was next for life. And he really wanted to stay in Alaska. And, obviously, as you mentioned, I've traveled quite a bit since then. I just didn't want to stay rooted, and we just grew apart getting married so young. So that kind of is what started the point of me moving. It was like, I ended in Portland first, kind of the Portland, Oregon area, Washington, and then Nevada. Nevada was the darkest point of the time that I have traveled, which has really tied into a lot of where I'm at now. And then I ended up in Florida because my parents are now in Florida. So I've been here since right before the pandemic started. I moved in with them at 27 for 6 months because I basically lost everything in Las Vegas. And I went through just probably, I'd say it, but at 27 was the worst year of my adult life. At least so
Mm.
far. Hopefully that's the peak of it for now. But it was a tough year, and it really I'm still feeling the effects of that year now. And even when it came down to dentistry, because when you're going through a depression, you just don't focus on your health. You just focus getting on to the next day. It's
Yeah.
survival at that point. And so I did it. It had a lot of moments that were heavy and a lot of moments that I had to unlearn. The behaviors that have really kind of contributed to where I am now and being in therapy. I started therapy as soon as I got to Florida, pretty much, because I had to heal from a lot of what had happened there in Vegas, and it was. It's when you go from having stability, which was having a job, a roof over my head, money in your bank account, financial stability, even, you feel like you've got it together. And then when you lose those things very quickly, that's what really, it just was all downhill from there. It was a series of bad events in a short period of time. So when I moved from Las Vegas to Florida, I had my dog, I think 2 suitcases and the clothes on my back and maybe 5 cents in my bank account. So it was
Wow.
not a good place. So I
Yeah.
had to start over.
Oh
So,
gosh.
yeah, so I've traveled a bit and I've hit some rough points, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, how do we fix some of the things that have happened? How do we create a better story for me moving forward?
Well, your Instagram is obviously a huge, huge, well known success, Abby in real life. And you have just openly allowed people to see you in real life, and you keep it really real. And I mean, the fact that, you've said that, I mean, gosh, you were almost homeless. It was unbelievably overwhelming doing this kind of flight of shame. I'm sure you felt like that to go back to, your parents' house now in Florida. It's a lot. And also backing up, you grew up, you have said that you're adopted as well. How is that dynamic playing into things in terms of your upbringing and
Mhm.
how that family was and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's something that it's always whenever somebody asks me like, what's one interesting fact about you, I always say I'm adopted. And it has been. I found out from a really young age. My parents were very good. My sister's adopted as well from, we have the same adoptive family, but different birth parents. And they've always been really big on making sure we knew that we were adopted, what adoption was. And then of course, as we grew up, that was just kind of a thing. It didn't really, I didn't think about it much until probably my junior year when my birth family reached out. And then you kind of
Mm,
start to think about your health side of things, as you get older. I didn't know anything about my genetics because my adoption was closed. So when they reached out, I think it was my junior year of high school, and it kind of opened the door for some of those conversations. They actually found me through MySpace, and it was a whole
oh wow.
weird, like,
Oh wow,
yeah, it was
yeah.
a weird situation.
Different times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And so they found me through MySpace, and I built a little bit of a relationship with them. I mean, I still talk to them through text message and things like that now, but I haven't met any of them. But it's created larger conversations over time about concerns, because I do know that my birth father's side had a history of heart disease and high blood pressure, and a lot of things that I'm experiencing now, like the high blood pressure in
Yeah.
pre-diabetes, like those are things that like raise a flag in your mind of like, oh, okay, like this is something that's in like my bloodline, like I need to be careful. Um, but yeah, so I've known that I'm adopted. I do have a relationship with them now. In fact, he is on my surgery list, my birth dad, to give an update because he's been super supportive and making sure that that I just am happy with where I am. So
That's great. Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, so you get to Florida
mhm.
and you're with your family. You're rebuilding from this kind of rock bottom that you're experiencing. And did things start, obviously, they start to change, turn around. But what was sort of the mindset? Like, how do you like, go from survival to actually kind of not just surviving, but thriving as you are with your, so many things that outwardly it looks like you are thriving now? Like, how do you get here?
A lot of really rough days.
Yeah.
The thing about healing, like the thing about healing and moving forward is that without therapy, I definitely wouldn't have been able to come face to face with some of the things that I experienced, because it's really easy for us as humans to just turn the switch off and say, okay, sweep it under the rug, it's gone, I'm done, move forward. But for me, I needed to address it. I needed to forgive myself for the situations that I put myself in, and then say, okay, this isn't me anymore. So what is me now? And so, kind of working through that in therapy has been a huge part of my success moving forward. Even there was a time period when I first got the job, I was living with my parents for about 7 months, and then I was just applying for jobs anywhere. Pensacola was a really hard market for me to find a job in my career, which is in purchasing. Um, it was just really difficult at the time. And then this was literally right before the pandemic started. I accepted a
Mm.
job in Gainesville at the University of Florida in February. And then I relocated here March 1st. And
Oh,
then
wow.
everything shut down. I literally
Oh
went
my
into
God.
work for
Horrible
one day.
timing.
Horrible timing. Well, and of course, so
Yeah.
and I'm in a fragile state. I'm like, okay, here's my my next chapter. Like everything's gonna be better now. Like I have a job, and I have like honestly, moving out of moving in with your parents at 27 doesn't feel good when you've been independent your entire adult life so far. And so it was
Yeah.
definitely a low. And so I'm excited. I was eager to move here, knowing absolutely nobody. I didn't have any connections to Gainesville. I just knew it was drivable to see my family. And it was a good career choice for me. So I accepted the job. I moved here. My mom helped me get here. My parents were amazing in helping me restart that chapter. So stability wise, I was feeling pretty good about things, but then the pandemic hit, and those first couple months were extremely challenging. In fact, at one point, I had to go back to them and stay with them during the quarantine because I couldn't get furniture in my apartment. I was like trying to make friends here through a pandemic is extremely difficult. I was posting in our word of mouth group for Gainesville for toilet paper because I couldn't find any at the store, and I couldn't afford to buy it in bulk at the time because I hadn't received my first check. And it was just this whole, I'm like, okay, I feel selfish for being upset right now because here I am begging for things to get better, and I get a job and I move to this new town and I have this opportunity to start over, and I'm still miserable. But
Yeah.
there were other elements of it that were coming into play. So I did, as soon as my health insurance kicked in, I had therapy, and I kind of started to work through those things. Um, Terrence and I had actually met, which is my husband now, during this whole period of time, which was interesting because we met on Instagram. He had DM'd me when I lived in Pensacola. And when he reached out, I was like, I am not in the place to have a relationship. I am living with my
He,
parents. I have no job.
yeah, and he lived in New Orleans, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
which was not far from Pensacola. So at first I was
Right.
like, oh, cool. Like,
Yeah.
you're like 3 hours away, no big deal. And I just didn't really take it super seriously because I told him pretty
Yeah.
straight up. I was like, look, I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I'm trying to get my life together. And he said,
Yeah.
that's fine. We can be friends and we'll see what happens, whatever. And he was very persistent.
Yeah.
Um,
How did he find you? Just like searching? He's like, okay, this one, I
yeah.
want this one. Like, I mean,
I
how does
mean,
that work?
well, it was
The
kind of funny because
algorithm is something else, man.
totally.
Yeah.
Well,
He's
and
like, read
then it was
his
before,
mind.
right. It was before Reels, so it was like, you're scrolling through the feed kind of thing. And so if you see, like the algorithm. So I'm sure I just ended up on his page in that way. But I think what ended up happening was, obviously he saw a picture of me and he's like, I'm going to shoot my shot. But he went through my profile and was kind of seeing that I had been posting, um, probably for the first time because I was not sharing a lot about my experience at first. So I am
Mhm.
extremely transparent on my platform now, but when I first moved to Pensacola, I was struggling so much that I didn't want to share. And I was struggling through, well, how do I share without making this sound like everything is Debbie Downer? Because I know that that things are going to get better eventually, but I just didn't want it to be. And then I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to share how I'm feeling. And I think he had reached out to me because I had posted something about my 28th birthday. It was like the week before my birthday. It was coming up, and I'm like, look, like I'm trying to process that I've just had one of the worst years of my life. And at 28 now, I live with my parents and I'm trying to get my life together, and it doesn't feel like it's going to get any better. And he had just sent me a really encouraging message and then kind of opened the door for conversation because I was watching Fridays on, like Friday, the movie with them on Friday. And so it was a whole silly thing, but it made me laugh. And in that moment, I just needed that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it started the conversation. And then, like I said, he was very persistent, because I just really was not interested at all at first. And then, I was like, well, maybe it would be nice to have somebody to talk to right now, as long as I knew and he knew that it wasn't going to be anything at the time, I thought. And
Right.
now here we are, 3.5 years later, married, and he lives in Gainesville with me. So,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think people could feel like, whenever we started chatting on our Instagram and I'm like scrolling down and I can see this transition and then in comes Darren's and then all of a sudden it's like this like love story fairy tale, the wedding of it's like move over at the Royals. I mean, you guys are like, like the high society here and everybody's like looking at the event of the century. And I mean, so is like how is life right now? Like is it as good as it seems? Are you still having some lows? Like how are you feeling right now?
yeah, I think I'm definitely better than I've ever been in the sense of having, I mean, I feel good in my career. Terrence and I are in a really great place. My relationships, my friendships, those have all become really positive. And then, of course, I'm excited for this next chapter of life. But I mean,
Yes.
there's definitely, like I said earlier, there's things that are coming up that I'm like, oh, I thought I was past this. And now I have to kind of confront it. But I feel really good about it because even though it is heavy and I have been a weeping mess for the last couple days, and I know I'm going to be that way after surgery too.
You are.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just a very sensitive person, and I mean, it doesn't take
Hmm.
much. I cried through Guardians of the Galaxy the other day. Like, it's
Hey, it
not,
was sad.
it
I
was,
almost cried during that movie too. They were so
yeah,
cute.
yeah. I'm a big feelings person, and yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
biggest way I could describe right now is I'm doing good, I'm feeling pretty good, but I have a lot of big feelings, and I
Yeah.
think that's pretty normal right now. At least I shared a post the other day, kind of talking about some of those big feelings, and quite a few
Hmm.
people either reached out or commented and said, I've been there or I'm there right now. So it
Yeah.
was nice to know I wasn't alone in that.
And let's talk about these big feelings a little bit. So, stepping back one step, when you've had this kind of weight gain, and you talk about almost using food as a coping mechanism through these really challenging, I don't care who you are,
Mm.
periods of your life of loneliness and darkness, and you're in Vegas and you come here. And then what makes you at this point, why now? I'm always so very curious when patients come in, like why, like what is your why? What is the motivation at this moment? Like how did you come to that?
Yeah. I think it's always been something that was kind of in the back of your mind, right? Like my mom, I didn't share this yet, but my mom had gastric bypass 16 years ago. And I watched her kind of go through that process, and I've seen her continuously go through the steps since then. And so it was kind of always in the back of my mind, but I don't think I was ready. and you reach a point where you become, I think, ready to make the
Yes.
change. And, several years ago when I was living in Alaska, um, right when I was about to go through my divorce, I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time, because at the time I think I was 275 and I just was really doing the yo-yo dieting thing, and I wasn't really sure if I even was a good candidate for it. But then I reached out and I just kept meeting all these obstacles. And I've talked a little bit about them on my platform even recently, but at the time when you approach something like this where you have to check the list, right? There are steps that you have to accomplish along the way with the pre-ops and the labs and things like that. One little obstacle was like, okay, this is too much work. I'm done.
Yep. The
And
universe
so that's
doesn't
what
want
happened.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, I must not want it bad enough because I'm done. And
Yeah.
so, I just kind of shut it off. And then over the last couple years, I guess when my social media platform started, which was by accident, I was just like trying to hold myself accountable because I had gone through the divorce. I had another relationship after that that lasted 4 years. I had been in back-to-back serious relationships, and I just hadn't been single and focusing on myself. And so I reached that point and I was like, okay, I need to like focus on me. And I was in my early 20s, so I'm like, let's just kind of figure something out. And I kept posting to try to push myself out of my comfort zone and reach a level of confidence and self-love where I was at. Because I'm like, I've tried all these diets, nothing is working. Maybe I just need to work on the self-esteem and the image first. And so I spent a fair amount of the last couple of years focusing on the self-love and building my confidence up and saying, okay, like, I'm not where I want to be, but am I okay with who I am in that process, And it doesn't really do you any good to continue to sit there and say, like, beat yourself up for where you're at. And so I focused on that. And then I would say probably, what was it, October of last year, I think I reached out, was kind of this turning point. So I actually had COVID right before this was the first time I had any serious health scare, since in several years. I had been doing pretty good. And then COVID came and I saw how badly I struggled. My breathing, and then I even felt bad going into the hospital because, God bless him, my husband, then at the time fiance, also had it. He's the reason I got it, was because we got it from a friend. And then he was struggling, and then I picked it up, and then he had to push me in a wheelchair into the hospital, and I just felt horrible because I couldn't even walk. And it got to the point where I was so scared, not being able to breathe right, and knowing that part of that was because of my weight. I was like, I know that I'm struggling more right now because of where I'm at with my weight. So I think that was kind of an eye opener. And I was kind of considering, and I'm like, at this point, I know that I have gained enough weight that I don't think I'm going to be able to get there on my own. And I tried. I had a fitness trainer. I was trying to change the behaviors with food while also trying to manage not wanting to obsess over it, because I knew that my mental health couldn't handle that. So that was trying. And then finally I went to a doctor. I had found a new primary doctor because I was having a lot of trouble, which is a whole nother long saga, that finding a doctor who will work with you and really try to figure out what's going on can be challenging, because a lot of times it's like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I'm like, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't tried those things.
Yeah, I've written a book on this, okay?
Yeah, right.
Right. So, it just, and I was really relieved though, because I found a doctor. And my doctor here is Hale Medical Group, and she just was so kind. And in that moment, that's what I needed in that first appointment. Not only did she not judge, I straight up, I threw it out there. I was like, look, here's where I'm at. I'm getting ready to get married in a couple months. I'm miserable. I'm not. My body hurts. My feet have been bothering me because I have plantar fasciitis. I used to be really extremely active, and it's, Zumba. I love Zumba. I love to dance, and just not being able to do those things was really challenging. So I think it was a lot of things, but then also, knowing I'm getting married, I wanted to have a family with Terrence eventually. It wasn't something that I had ever thought about before him and I wasn't thinking, oh, I want to be a mom someday. And then it was like this switch flipped, and I'm like, I just want to build a family with him. And I know being adopted that I could do that through adoption, but I also want to have a chance at having our own genetic children as well. And So there was a lot of factors that went into the why. But it also took knowing that feeling stuck wasn't where I had to be. And that was the first person, my doctor at Hale Medical. She was the one who put it for me best because I didn't know how to describe where I was at. And then I was in that conversation with her, we were talking about different things. I just kind of said, here's where I'm at. Here are my goals. I don't know how to get there. And she said, so it sounds like you're stuck. And she goes, but at your age, with your current conditions and things like that, you would do really well if you had the surgery, bariatric surgery. Have you considered that? And I said, yeah, my mom had it. I've considered it, but I was scared, I'm like, there's a lot that goes into it. So I did a lot of thinking on it. And the first thing that I did when I got home was talk to Terrence. And he was extremely supportive. He's always been extremely supportive. And he's like, if that's what you want to do, I'm here for you. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start because I didn't think that I had coverage. At the time I didn't. And then I'm like, well, I have gone through so many avenues, trying to get things approved. And so at the time, my doctor actually referred me out here to UF Health, and they wouldn't even have a conversation until it was approved by the insurance. There was a process that you had to go through. And it just seemed really like, I just wanted information. I just wanted to know like where to start. Because I think that's the first thing you think about when you're like, okay, I'm ready to do this. How do I get there? And so it was just a little unclear to me. And then it seemed like there were roadblocks again. And then of course I realized that my insurance didn't cover it. And that was kind of defeating. And I think I even cried that night to Terrence, and I was just like, I know what I want, and I can't even get there because I don't have the coverage for it, and I can't afford to pay for it on my own. And so I was really defeated. And then I was scrolling through social media, and sometimes I scroll through and I'm like, well, maybe because I have this platform now, if I reach out to somebody, we can work something out and I can share that experience, which is kind of daunting when you think about something like this, because I'm like, there's a lot of vulnerability involved. So me being willing to do that at the time while, trying to see if I could even get to surgery was scary. But I reached out to Dr. Dovec here, and I had just said, I don't even know where to start. I think I had sent this whole long paragraph, and I was like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know if I have coverage. I don't think I'm going to have coverage, but I just want to get here. And you immediately, I think, almost respond, and we're like, we're going to figure this out. I have a lot of ideas. And that was such a relief to me, because I had just had that doctor's appointment where she was like, you know what, we're going to figure it out. And then I met you through social media, and you were like, we're going to figure it out. And I'm like, maybe we'll actually figure this out. So it was hope. It gave me a lot of hope.
Oh, well, I'm glad you feel that way. And, you were talking about, well, obviously the supportive nature of your physician, which is just that we talk about that all the time. Like how these doctors, you go in, you hurt your knee, but like, it's your weight. You have a cold, it's your weight. Right. It's your, your nose hurts, it's your weight. Like, right. It's so overwhelming.
And then when you go in to actually talk about your weight, they're like, well, have you tried diet and exercise?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, no, what?
Never thought of that.
Yeah. Like, and it's just so much. So you actually have a supportive physician. You have this now supportive fiance who ultimately becomes the husband. So now you have this huge fan base, and you talk about vulnerability and kind of putting things out there and just trying to figure it out. And now as you're still navigating it, still dealing with these big emotions, which I want to tap into, how do you decide that, all right, I'm going to push post on the thing that I'm telling all these, you have 100 and some thousand people that follow me, that I'm doing this. And it's in this, you have this body positivity. I'm living my life. I'm very real. But now you're taking this spin. And how was that frightening to like put that out there?
Yeah, extremely. And because there's something that's really interesting about the kind of the plus size community, or however you want to word it, body positive community. There's so many different avenues to these different social communities online. And they kind of all intersect at some point, but trying to figure out what your messaging is along the way, that was something that I really struggled with as I was building my platform, because I'm like, well, where do I want to align myself? Like, what feels right for me? And I landed with kind of the self-love, loving yourself at any phase of life. And for me, I think I maybe even subconsciously chose that because I'm like, this may not always be where I'm at, right? Like, I mean, maybe kind of hopefully I'm like, someday I may be in a different place, because I know I need to be for my health. And I wanted to be able to relate that across the board. So I've never once aligned myself with one specific community for that reason. But again, because they intersect, you get a lot of that same following. And I do understand those different avenues. But I, you are never going to please everybody. And when you hit post, you're opening yourself up anytime you put something on social media to good, bad, the ugly. Honestly, I've received some horrible messages in my time being on social media. But so it was scary. It was daunting. And I wrote and rewrote probably 1,000 times what I was going to say. And for me, Abby in real life is just throwing it out there. This is what it is. Rip the Band-Aid off. And that's what I wanted to do, because a lot of times, and there's no shame in this, but there has been a lot of people that I have followed in the past, plus size creators, who did go down this journey, and were either ashamed to share it or were afraid to share it because they were going to be harassed, or commented and say, oh, everything you ever said was a lie. And I did receive some of that, but I don't think I got it to that level because of the way that I think I put it out there, because there's a lot of reasons. I've shared some of my whys here, and my followers know. They followed the story. They know my love with Terrence, and that like wanting to have a family with him and sharing that vulnerability, is important to me, because I want people to understand, for me, having this surgery isn't about wanting to be a certain size. I don't care where I end up as long as my health is good. And I hit those goals of being able to have a family and feeling better when I'm walking, not having my feet and my back hurt, like just all of these non-scale victories along the way. I mean, most of my list is built up of non-scale things, like, it's the seatbelt in the car, the airplane, things like that you don't think are so mentally jarring, but it is. So I was just I was hoping when I made the post and shared, again, I kind of worded things in a way that I was hopeful that like, hey, not everyone's going to understand, and that's fine. You don't have to, but I'm doing this. I'm not seeking medical advice. That was one of the first things I said. My mind is made up, and I knew I wasn't going to post until I knew my mind was made up. I made the post after my surgery was scheduled for that reason. And I wanted to make sure that like people knew, hey, full steam ahead, we're doing this. And then, of course, it was wanting to make sure that people understood that I understand that because you may not be in a place where you can focus on following somebody's journey like this, without affecting your own mental health, if you're dealing with an eating disorder or things like that, it can be triggering. So I said, look, I protect your space. I'm going to protect mine. And I just threw it out there. And if people unfollowed me along the way, I knew that I would gain a different type of audience of people who were maybe going through this or had been through it. And actually, I had a surprising response of people who I had no clue and wouldn't have ever guessed had already had surgery and were like, hey, I'm here for you. I know this is difficult. So it's been really overwhelming, but extremely supportive. There was some negativity that came from it, but it was very minimal, I think, compared to where it could have been. I would like to think that that's because of the transparency that I put into it.
Yeah, I think no doubt. This can't help to think about the reason why this is so courageous in my mind, especially courageous, is that there are very few of us that put it out there while we're going through it.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in real time. Now, when do we all do it? We put it in all of a sudden as you're through surgery, you're now the after. And it was like, yeah, I was struggling, but here I am now. And that's still like, wow, I mean, awesome, you did that. It was still hard. And for people who do that, great. For me, myself, I talk about this all the time. Now, I went through infertility, but you better believe I could never, ever have had the courage to post every 28 days when I got the negative pregnancy test or the bad news. I just couldn't even bear to have someone pity me or give me like you said, the negativity or any of that. So the fact that you're like in step with this thing, putting it out there, man, and even saying like, I've made up my mind, I'm full steam ahead, but that doesn't mean that I'm not very scared. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm weepy. I'm emotional. And I want to talk about that now. Like, so we're right now, today we're recording on June 7th. Your surgery is on Friday, June 16th. You are picking the gastric bypass, and I think you're going to do extraordinary with that. But like, how does it feel in these last moments of preparation that you're going through here?
It's exciting. And I would say that there's definitely more excitement than anxious moments right now, but it is also, it just like, it's a lot to think about, it's like, because you
Yeah.
don't know. And when you're somebody like me who has anxiety, even something as simple as getting my lab results back this morning and wondering what the numbers meant, and if it was going to like deter something or whatever, it's just
Yeah.
one little thing is so easy for somebody like me who has anxiety to overthink. And so in some ways, I've almost made it a little bit harder on myself, I think, because I scheduled it further out, being that my mom was out of the country. I almost wish that if she had been in town, I would have already had it, truthfully.
I know we already called you like 3 times. Like, do you want to move up?
I know. And I wanted to every time. I was like, okay, yeah, because that's less time for me to have to sit there and think about it. But I
Yeah.
think in
Right.
some ways it's also positive because I do feel extremely prepared in terms of the knowledge and just like listening to people's stories and experiences in your Facebook group and seeing people who have just had it and what their challenges are and kind of mentally preparing for that. It's given me some time to be mentally prepared. But it is like it's a little heavy and even something as simple as when I had my first conversation with Hannah and talking through the food and when you have spent years of your life yo-yo dieting, it's triggering in some ways that you're having to count your food and count your intake and use like right now I'm using the bariatric app to track everything, which is extremely helpful. But it did kind of give me those early flashback reminders of like my Fitness Pal and Weight Watchers, and it's like, but this is different, there's something
Yeah.
different about this, given that I'm in a much healthier mental space to be able to say, the reason that I'm tracking these things is because I know that it's important to the process. Or even when it came to reframing my mindset around cutting the 3 week diet, cutting things out, and then even going into the sugar free, at first I was like, and I think a lot of people think that it's almost, and I can't speak for everybody because I know you guys have talked a lot on your platforms of different surgeons and different offices have different requirements. But understanding that the reason isn't because they're like, oh, this is one final push for you to lose the weight. It's that they, wanting to be in a healthy place for your liver to make complications during surgery less possible, just making it easier for the surgeon to get to the liver. So I even had to reframe my mindset around that a little bit because I was like, this isn't one final punishment, it's
Right.
making sure A, you're
Oh,
ready,
good
and
point.
B, that you are doing everything you can to do your part to make the surgery easier for the surgeon.
And like, and turning it to Hannah, you talked a few times about this, and I just want to pause on this. This is such a good thing, and we don't talk about this much. It's this a fine line between being compliant and we're like, oh, what a good patient, here's your gold star,
Mhm.
and doing what you need to do for the safety, the liver shrinking after
Right.
surgery, the healing, all of that.
Right.
But how do you not be obsessive and all consumed by the rules in the
Right.
cage,
And especially for somebody who, and most of our patients have
Sure.
done this yo-yo diet, loss and gain, and they've done every iteration of low carb
Hmm.
that they're, whatever you're gonna call it, keto, Atkins,
True.
South Beach, it's low carb, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, and I do think that that's something I'm sure talked about in when we had our meeting. It's been a couple weeks, but that fine line of it's changing the mindset around
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah,
I
well,
think
even
that's
when I reached
important.
out to you, it was like, okay, like it's trying to understand, what things are going to make your body feel good. When I was like, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really tired right now, and you're like, oh, maybe you need to increase your calorie intake, and it was like some of the things, because I showed you exactly what I was eating at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and being able to understand, like, it's really given me so much knowledge and insight to like how one item you can make you feel better depending on what you need that day or where you're at, what you're trying, what your goals are. So
Right.
I think for me, that's really helped with not obsessing over it. And then
Mhm.
also therapy, of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
talking through it in therapy. I mean, I'm so pro therapy. But then also, there are little things that I do. Like right now, I don't keep a scale in my house right at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't weighed myself since I started this process initially, other than my first doctor's appointment. I usually weigh myself at my doctor's appointments, and then I just signed up for a gym membership around the corner from my house, and they have a scale there as well. So in my head, if I can go to the gym and weigh myself, at least to start, you know, eventually I may be in a healthier place where I can have a scale in the house and I'm not going to obsess over it. But I do think that knowing my personality, that's something that I would struggle with, you know, and I don't want to be sitting here 2 months from now after I've gone through the initial stages of everything and being like, oh man, I only lost 5 pounds this week. And I know a lot of people do struggle with that because I see it in the group and I feel for them because I'm like, you've worked so hard to get here and you're still like feeling that obsessive. And honestly, I just think that wouldn't help my mental health. I know myself well enough to know that it's not going to help me.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's so good. Like, to improve yourself, you have to know yourself, and you know that stepping on a scale on a daily basis, if it goes up or down, like, wait, I gain a point of an ounce, or I gain a pound or 2 pounds, you know, it happens. And I say this, but even myself, and it doesn't matter what size you are, like, I haven't stepped on the scale in months because it was just like, it was so controlling, and I'm like, what is your problem? And I know it seems like, I think we all feel that way. That number is tied to the way our mood is for the day. We talk about this obsessively. It's, and I think that's great. I would say, trust the process. You are, you know, switching gears back to when you're saying like up every little thing, like you're worried about the labs, you're waiting for this moment of disappointment, like, see, it didn't work out, it wasn't meant to be, you're not worthy or whatever, to feel that way. But we will say that in our practice, you have been the most like boom on it patient that we've ever had, I think.
Yeah, because we can see, you know, we see all of the texts, right? So whoever, we can all respond to whoever and everything. And we see you like, okay, just went to the doctor this morning and they're sending this over. And okay, here's the fax number. And like, here, is this, did you get it? If not, okay, I'm calling them right now. And then it's like, then I see the phone call coming from Hale. And I'm like, oh, that's Abby. I know that Hale is Abby. Like,
exactly.
You know, and it's like, okay, we've got, and, you know, I know you and Taylor who works with us really closely together to get a lot of the stuff taken care of. So, but yeah, we definitely were like, oh my gosh, she's just so like, good. She's on it. You are like type A.
Yeah. And I think that's great. You're like trusting the process. You're, we talk about meeting the middle, like you're doing your part. Even when we talked, I don't really even want you to fixate on the scale. Like, I think that's very wrong of bariatric surgeons and programs and even dietitians, anybody, to say that you have to lose X amount is arbitrary. I just feel like it puts too much stress on it, and then you don't achieve it, and then it's like shame on you. And like you said, that one final punishment, boy, that really gets me thinking about just rephrasing even how to make sure that patients know that it is not a punishment. That's a pretty profound
it's like
thought.
Not a punishment, it's preparation.
Yeah, it's just preparation. And you are prepared, my friend.
I know.
So what do you have all of for your 2 days of clear liquids that our program does? Do you have your whole
everything?
Oh, of course you do. Is your stash like already ready in color? Is that Rory G. Bibb?
Did you say you're having like friends go to Publix to buy you like cases or like to like Costco, BJ's, like whatever, to buy cases of things?
It is so hard to find Fairlifes here, and I just love them.
It's everywhere.
Even Terrence now is onto them, so it's like having to have extra stock because he's drinking them too.
Oh, he's eating your stash. Great.
Oh no, my stash is hidden. The one I got yesterday is hidden. You can't find that. So that's from my full liquids, and I'm so hopeful. I'm so hopeful that I don't have the like the shift of taste buds for that one specifically, but we'll see. But I am prepared, and it's funny because even like sitting right here next to my computer desk is like my little bariatric.
Oh my
there
gosh!
You go.
You know,
wow.
Got our vitamins,
gas. In fact, I did a like a haul.
Yeah, show us what's your haul here? Show us.
Oh, Liquicell.
I got one in a sample pack.
Yeah. It's like a concentrated protein supplement. So it's kind of like the consistency of not quite honey, like a little thinner than honey, I would say. I used to use them a lot in dialysis because they're super low volume. And they're like 15 grams of protein, I want to say, in one of those.
What do you do? Squirt it in your mouth?
You can, or you can mix it into like water, or
that's what I did.
You can do like mocktails with them. So like, again, that was kind of for a different population where you could put it with like ginger ale or something like that. But they come. I've always heard the watermelon.
They
People
have
always
the
love the
ginger ale
watermelon
flavor.
flavored. They have a Oh, that's new then.
Look
Ginger
at
ale.
you. She whips it out. Oh, you
She's
happen to
got
mention
it.
this?
Yeah,
I haven't.
I have it. But yeah, they're a great little product. I mean,
Yeah. Well, so I tried it because they sent it in a sample pack.
Uh-huh.
When I was trying to figure out what vitamins I wanted to go with, I was trying all the sample
Mhm.
packs. And I think ProHealth had sent one in there just as like a whole kit of what you could get.
Mhm.
And
Oh, wow.
and I was like, oh, actually, ironically, I only tried it the one day kind of by accident because I was practicing my good behaviors of like trying to fix my routine, which is a whole nother
Mhm.
thing, which is I was really, really bad at not eating lunch or waiting until like the end of the day of eating lunch.
Mhm.
And so just trying to get into the habit of, hey, you need to step away and actually do something. And on this particular
Yes.
day, I could not. It was, I had meetings back to back to back, but I didn't have
Yeah.
anything on my desk drawer that was going to be sustainable except for this. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, I had drank it before I went into the meeting and I was full until I was able to get back to food. And I was like, this was perfect. And it just, and
Wow.
it
Oh,
was
that's
Yeah.
good.
good.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
They're really
actually
not
pretty good.
bad.
I just
I
put it
was.
in the
Yeah.
water. I will say it was a little better once I added ice to the water, but yeah.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
Okay.
definitely some tricks with those types of things.
Well, with this
Yeah.
haul you have, are these companies like reaching out to you, or are you like just getting their like sample stuff and you're reaching out to them?
It's been kind of a combination. So I reached out to them. And then, so like Celebrate, for example, I'm doing an ambassadorship with them for the next year, which I was really excited about because when you're shifting gears as an influencer or content creator, you almost have to build the relationships with these brands and say, hey, like, I know I haven't done this type of content before, but
Yeah.
I think people are going to be invested for this reason. And so being able to kind of showcase the response that I received on even just the early post, I think is what has kind of helped me build these relationships. And then, they were the first to take a chance on me and say, hey, we want to support you through this journey. And so I was really
Wow,
excited about
That's
that.
awesome.
And they've been amazing. So I have all of my core vitamins.
oh,
Um,
look at you.
and then, yeah, so I have those.
Oh,
I'm ready
good.
for that. And I have my pill organizer that I got on Amazon. So I'm actually going to
Yes.
do that this
I
weekend.
messaged you. I was like, those are amazing. It's one of the ones
Yeah,
that's like
it's
7 days and it's got 4 slots in each day and you just take your little
Oh,
thing with you.
Yep,
yes.
it's
Yeah. I
perfect.
saw someone
Yeah.
recently had a round one too, with like a little
Yes.
Oh, I want to see these.
tube, which was
Yeah,
cute.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And then and it was super cheap too, like $8 on Amazon or something,
Yeah.
8.99. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it was nice to
wow.
be able to just grab that. And then so I'm packing my vitamins into my container this weekend. I'm packing my
Mhm.
hospital bag this weekend. And then I did get oh, I dropped some. My the
Oh,
Isopure.
there you go.
I bought
The
that on
unflavored
Amazon too
one.
as part of my haul. I have
Oh,
sugar-free
nice.
Mio.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Nice.
of course, the Gas X.
Yes.
Um, and then
Probably the most
actually,
important thing in
I
there.
know.
there's a couple of these packets of the unflavored, I think it's Gen Pro.
Gen Pro.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know that one
Yeah.
either.
Because
It's
people, I
pretty
had
like
mixed
medical.
reviews from people
Yeah.
when I posted, I think on Instagram about it, talking about what um, unflavored proteins people like is depending on
Yeah.
like if it's kind of that gritty or like if you could taste it or not. I don't tend to have an issue with textures like that right now, but I know that that could change. So I
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
have
The
both.
biggest thing is don't put it in super hot liquid. Make
Okay.
sure any liquid you mix it in is under 140 degrees
Okay.
because otherwise the protein cooks and it like coagulates and that makes
Mm,
it like lumpy and
yeah. I've
nobody
had that
wants
happen with
that.
protein powders before where it was just really
Yeah.
lumpy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the trick with if you're gonna mix it into like something warm. And then the other thing, I think people think that unflavored means no flavor,
Right.
and it doesn't. Whey naturally has like a flavor to it, so that's the
Right.
other challenging part. Is it still has that like whey
Yeah.
whey taste?
Yeah.
What is
So
that?
finding that like something to mask it.
Yeah.
That
I
can be
saw a
good in
lot of
just
people
plain
say,
water.
right, if you put it into something like a sugar-free pudding or something that has
Hmm.
a flavor by itself, then it's less,
Yeah,
it's easier to digest.
applesauce. Yeah.
Right, applesauce, yeah. Yeah, I saw that
Hmm.
too. So I just want to be prepared with that. And then I didn't want to commit too much to things. So like the powders, right now I didn't invest in flavors because I wanted to see what I would like first.
Yeah,
So
for
I do have
sure.
a couple sample packs on the way of different like protein flavors.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to buy, you know, because it's like a big old container you can get for a decent amount of money, but I would hate to buy that and then not like it after
Yeah,
surgery. So,
for sure.
Yeah, gosh. Don't buy a lifetime supply.
No,
But
right.
try
just
before
get
you
enough to
buy.
get through the first couple days a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
and then you're going to be on regular food soon enough. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
like you said, you're getting in the healthy habits. Don't skip meals. I used to see a therapist when I was in fellowship training, and it was very intense. And she was like, you got to like do the basic stuff like, you know, eating, drinking, you know, resting. And so you got during this part, that's the biggest thing I think about the starch free, the preparation diet is just breakfast, lunch, dinner. Try to get in there, take care of yourself. Excuse me, I can't have a meeting at that time. I mean, we're all bad about it, but yeah, just mentally kind of get ready and all of that. So
Yeah, we're so excited for you.
I know.
Yeah.
I
it's
know.
right around the corner. So,
So some last minute parting thoughts to you. Like I've said a million times, like if you don't sleep the night before surgery, that's pretty normal. It's like restless.
Yeah.
You're worried your alarm's not going to go off. You're going to miss it. You know, like all these weird thoughts. Are you spending the night in a hotel the night before?
I am. Yeah. We're coming down Thursday. My mom flies in that day.
Oh, wow.
So she has a
Okay.
hotel too. So it'll be Terrence and my mom and I. And then, yeah, because early morning. So,
5:30.
Yeah.
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 You'll
I
have
was
to
gonna say,
be there
that's quite a
5:30.
trek from Gainesville.
Yeah, that's why I was like, are you traveling in the middle of the night? But that's good. So try to get some rest,
Yeah.
but you probably won't. And then the night after, like we talk about, you're just, we talked about this on our last podcast. You're now sore, you're relieved, it's over. The fear of the unknown is gone. You know very much so what's happening. And then it's another restless night. And so it's like 2 nights of just sort of like, and then that equals crying. Lots and lots of tears, lots
Right.
of crying. So
Yeah, weepy weepy.
yes,
Yep.
but then
Yeah.
you'll rest and then it'll happen and then you're going to start losing weight and feeling great and and then we can't wait to watch it all unfold and you
Yeah.
sharing your journey. So what's the best way for people to follow you and just to, see what you're doing?
Yeah, Abby in Real Life on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and then I am relaunching my blog through this process too, so that I can kind
Wow.
of put those thoughts into, the longer captions into an actual blog post. So all of that's through my Instagram though, primarily. So yeah, Abby in Real
Right,
Life.
and it's Abby with one B.
Yes, ABY.
ABY.
Yes.
ABY in Real Life. All one word.
Yeah.
Follow her. I mean,
Yes.
I just go down the rabbit hole of your stuff too much. I'm like, oh,
I know.
I haven't looked up. I
She's
haven't seen my kids.
influenced me.
Me too.
I bought those egg wraps you posted. They're in my fridge.
Yes.
No plan on what I'm going to use them for, but I have them.
She'll cook something for me.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
can't wait to hear how you like them. Yeah.
I know. I see them all the time, and finally I was like, all right, put them in
Right.
the cart.
I know all of your
Yeah.
stuff. I can't wait to hear the Zumba instructor.
Uh-huh.
Like all these things,
Yeah, mama down the line.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, Terrence and I have kind of decided for the next year, obviously because I need to get to where I want to be and healthy wise. Going to be focusing on all those smaller things like the traveling and wanting to go kayaking eventually and just doing more right now and being able to enjoy it more because my feet won't hurt as much and my back and things like that. So we're excited for this kind of next chapter and then prepare for the next one, which will be mommyhood eventually.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you'll have a nice time to have the time of just the two of you.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
great. The early marriage too. Like, there's no
Right.
rush. You can't. We're telling you not to rush.
Yeah,
That's the one
right.
thing we're telling you. Like,
Yeah.
you can't. Please don't. Please don't
Right.
get pregnant yet. And yeah, you just have this time to even get to know each other more, who
Yeah.
you are on the inside, and all that great stuff.
Love it.
Well, okay, here we go.
Yeah. And as always, you can thank you, Abby, for joining us. This
Yes,
is great. We'll definitely
thank
have to
you.
have you back
Yeah.
down the
we will.
line. We'll have a follow-up, see how you're progressing and all of that.
It's gonna be the Abby series.
Yeah,
I used to
right?
have like one of my highlights on my Insta. Did you see? It says Abby story.
Yes, actually, somebody reached out to me and was like, "You're a highlight," and I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, you're a highlight on the Body Bariatrics, or is it your page?" I think it's your
on
page.
my page, Dr.
Yeah.
Dovec. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Dovec. So, yeah, I was excited to see that. So, yeah, it's
Yes,
awesome.
and
I've
that
had
triumphant
many-
pose.
Yes, and so many of your people who have had surgery have reached out and been so supportive. So it's been
Oh,
awesome.
good.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, you can find us on Instagram, Dr. X Dietitian, of course, Dr. Dovec, at Dr. Dovec, at HannahSkylar.rd, at Aby in real life. We're all over the place. You'll find us one way or another. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will look forward to talking with you soon. And good luck with your surgery. It's going to go awesome.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you next time.